Thank you so much, everybody. Thank you, Sarah, and welcome. And welcome if you're watching online. Firstly, can I introduce Satinder and Kate for their first ever FRCC. Satinder Sahota joins us from Birmingham City Council, where he also supported the West Midlands Fire Service, standing in as our interim Assistant Director for Legal Governance and Compliance. And we also have Kate Taylor, who joins us from the West Midlands Combined Authority. I'm sorry to Richard Parker for stealing you, where she worked on securing the single settlement and is now our Director of Finance. Both first FRCCs, so please join me in welcoming them. Sarah, do we have any apologies, please?
Sorry, we have apologies from Councillor James Lewis, Councillor Carol Patterson, but Councillor Crook is attending as a substitute, and Councillor Denise Jeffrey.
Lovely, thank you. I know that Councillor James Lewis is up at Nexus with the Secretary of State, so I do see why he can't be here. Any declarations of interest? Any interests that need to be declared? No, thank you. Moving on to item 3. Exclusion of press and public. Officers have advised that the information contained in Appendix 2 of Agenda Item 8, Corporate Risk Register, is to be treated as exempt under Paragraph 3 of Part 1 to Schedule 12A of the Local Government Act 1972, as it contains information relating to the financial or business affairs of any particular person, including the Combined Authority, and further that it is considered that the public interest in maintaining the content of the appendix as exempt outweighs the public interest in disclosing the information, as publication could prejudice current and future decision making. If we agree, the press and public will be excluded should members wish to discuss the content of Appendix 2 when we consider item 8. I'm not sure how many members of the public we have with us, but are we content to agree the recommendation that the information is exempt? We are happy to agree. Thank you so much. Moving on to the minutes of the meeting from February the 19th. Any comments or questions? No, thank you. Are we content to confirm these minutes as an accurate record? We are, thank you. Okay, moving on to item 5, Quarter 3 Corporate Performance Report 24-25. This provides an update on performance against business plan objectives for that year. It sets out the work undertaken to strengthen performance reporting, assessment and management for the coming year. Sarah Eaton will be leading a short presentation summarising those key points, including achievements and challenges where mitigations for those challenges are in place. So over to yourself, Sarah.
I've got these glasses as well now, so I'm confused about taking them on and off and trying to do the mic at the same time. So apologies for that. I can't seem to see with them on or off, which is not a great move, is it really? But not a good purchase. But obviously, this committee has been receiving kind of quarterly updates on performance throughout the year, and I think we've talked the committee through kind of the work that we're trying to progress around performance management within the Combined Authority. Really, because we think this is incredibly important, especially as we're moving over this next period into kind of significant delivery of big major programmes. So this is the end of year report for 24-25. So there's a bit of a legacy around some of the indicators that are in here, and that kind of strengthened approach will take place from the next quarter. So what we're looking at is kind of progress that we've achieved over 24-25 in this current report. And I think it's fair to say that if you read through this, there's quite a lot in the report. It's a big report, but I think in some of the things that we've been tracking over the previous quarters, we can see that there's a strengthening, increasing confidence in delivery from quarter 3 to quarter 4. So some of the areas that we were talking about last time round have improved during this last quarter. And that it's in terms of meeting key targets, milestones for the kind of the year as a whole. The themes in the risks arising, and we'll come on to this a little bit later on, continue to fall broadly into 2 categories really, around market forces and external influences, and kind of that internal capacity where resources challenges kind of persist really. And I think if you look at the areas where performance is perhaps not on track, some of that is an underlying factor in that particular area. I think because it's end of year in the report, we've kind of summarised some of the wider kind of activity that's been achieved over the coming year. So there's been some really great activity from publishing the local growth plan, kind of supporting a huge number of people to kind of upskill and retrain. We've done quite a lot of work around refurbishment of things like Halifax bus station. So there's some really big achievements over this year, which I think we need to kind of reflect on really, because I think it has been a very busy year. But just moving on in terms of kind of the headline outcomes really. So what we can see is that from quarter 3 to quarter 4, we've seen an increase in the number of kind of outcomes that have reporting as blue, from 40 to 57, and a significant decrease from the number which partly satisfy key requirements. So they've dropped from 69 to 52, and I think that's partly because a number have gone into that blue category now at the end of year. In terms of amber red, we've had a slight increase from last time round, and I think it's important to kind of just emphasise that we've been quite challenging at this end of year in terms of challenging our colleagues around how they are judging performance, and we've put a little bit of pressure on because we are wanting to get into that mature cycle of kind of really looking at the areas where we're not performing. That it's not a bad thing to be saying that we're not doing everything on track. I think it's the kind of understanding the mitigating action. So we want to be clear that in this next period we are getting into a space where we are going to be challenging our colleagues around delivery. So we have moved another area into that kind of amber red category, but we have seen one area move from quarter 3, drop from being red. So we've got one red activity that is still in there over this coming period, and I'll just touch on some of those as we move through. So just broadly, in terms of how that looks across the missions, what you'll see is that there's actually a level of consistency across the period around the particular outcomes that fall within those missions. You'll see that kind of mission 1, we've seen an increase really. We've performed kind of better at the end of quarter 4. So we were kind of in that midway in quarter 2, quarter 3. I think in mission 4, where we'd had some particular issues, we've got some amber red performance during quarter 2, quarter 3. We've managed to kind of improve some of those activities over that period, and we're now kind of in that kind of blue category. And obviously mission 5, we've seen an increase in the areas where we were kind of performing better than we were during that middle part of the year. And I think you sometimes get this with performance where you get a dip in quarter 2 and quarter 3 as we kind of identify particular issues that we're grappling with in terms of delivery. So just moving on. Obviously the report's got a lot in there. I just wanted to focus on a few things for colleagues, but that's not to preclude any kind of conversation around anything else that's in the report, really. But just to say that we've seen a really good kind of strong performance around employment support. And if you're looking at that's kind of really over delivery against target. So we've enabled nearly 7,000 adults to upskill or reskill, and that's 160% against target. And that's meant that the Employment West Yorkshire programme has been approved to continue delivery until March 2026 now. In terms of the work that we're doing providing support to business, you'll see there that there's been kind of a strong performance throughout the year around those particular activities that sit within that theme really. And that means that we've supported around 3,137 businesses through the Growth Hub, and lots of other activity that has enabled us to kind of progress that kind of strong performance throughout quarter 4 towards the end of the year. In terms of housing and regeneration, the Brownfield Housing Fund has secured approvals to over-deliver against a target of 5,000 house target, and with over 30% of affordable homes now to be secured through the programme. And we've also agreed an extension with the government of around £15 million of the funding to deliver kind of British Library North and the National Poetry Centre. So kind of progress in that space has improved, I think, because of some of those announcements that we got towards the end of the year. So that's really good, I think, in terms of where we were at quarter 3. Just on the highways network, we've spent approximately 72 million on improving the road network across West Yorkshire through the CRTS funding, and that's resulted in kind of 80 kilometres of roads renewed. And as you'll see there, some other improvements that have meant that we've kind of maintained that kind of high level of performance across the period. Mass transit, you'll see there that in terms of some of the work that's been developed throughout the period, we've really been performing on target on that programme over this last financial year, which colleagues will be aware of through various reports that have been coming to the Combined Authority. Climate and Environment Plan was adopted by the Combined Authority in April 2025, and we've seen like a number of projects, about £2 million worth of funding allocated for 81 projects that have taken place around green space and kind of nature environment there. And just on the final one there on housing decarbonisation, we've launched Home Energy West Yorkshire initiative, which has so far exceeded targets around kind of retrofit measures in various properties, which is, I think, is particularly pleasing because a lot of those projects have been developed in kind of areas where there's particular issues with deprivation, and I think we know that's going to be a really big issue in terms of supporting people, particularly where they've got challenges around cost of living, that particular area. So those are some particular successes I think that we've seen over this recent period. Just in terms of kind of where we've got outstanding delivery, you'll see there on adult skills, and this is an area where we have been particularly challenging with colleagues, that we are doing particularly well around some of the activity that's taken place around the adult skills portfolio. But what we've actually found, and you'll see a little bit more detail in the report, that we've not hit the end of financial year target. And I think there's a bit of a lesson in this particular area of performance, because what we've actually will do is at the end of the academic year we'll hit the targets for the academic year, but the work's not necessarily been profiled effectively over this coming period. So I think at the end of the academic year we will see significant progress around hitting particular targets, but I think there's a lesson here around the maturity of the work that we do around forecasting and target setting, and that's something that we need to kind of be looking at. So some really good progress. We'll hit the academic year progress, but more to be thinking around about how we profile activity particularly across areas that move across financial years. So there's something around how we kind of mature our processes there. I think in terms of foreign investment in West Yorkshire economy, there's been a lot of activity take place, but we've not hit kind of our own targets there for kind of delivering some of that investment into the region that we were expecting over that current period of time. So we've seen a kind of a drop in performance towards the end of the year, and that's something that we're going to be picking up in terms of our activity over this coming year around our international strategy. But again, further work to kind of do in that particular area. Asset management is one that we have identified as an area that's gone into red. So that's the area that's I talked about earlier that is still kind of in that category really. And I think this is about how we strengthen as a combined authority our approach to asset management. And I think the closure of Bradford Interchange kind of demonstrated some of the activity that we need to be doing over this coming period. I think we've had some resource challenges in this space, but what we are doing, and we have been doing over the last few months, is kind of trying to accelerate our activity around supporting development work on that particular area. So we're doing some work, we've got planned work, which will take us up to September around condition surveys around some of our assets. So there's a lot of work in train to kind of get there, but at the end of year that was kind of flagging as red. And then I think the final two areas here are around local electric vehicle infrastructure. There's been some really positive progress there, but I think we've not managed to kind of hit all the targets we've got in place, and some of that is to do with kind of getting contracts in place with our local authority partners, but there's also a delay around in terms of progressing to kind of the phase 2 of that programme, learning lessons from phase 1 so that we can accelerate delivery over this coming period. And then I think finally the last area that is flagging amber, and we've improved from quarter 3, is around kind of 500 installations around. We had an end of March 2025 target, has not been achieved. There's been a significant delay around the start of that programme, but there's been also introducing of some further guidance, which has meant that we've not we had to pause in terms of some of that work, and obviously that's something that we've been looking to kind of adjust over this coming period. So the 1,500 installations by March 26 is on track, but we've obviously had that dip around performance in this current financial year. And I think again that there's something around how are we kind of being really clear about how we're measuring performance across financial years. I think because when we did this, kind of develop the performance indicators around the corporate plan, we had a 1-year corporate plan, and I think what we've moved into around a 3-year kind of corporate plan gives that ability to kind of do forecasting beyond financial years much more effectively. So that's something that we'll be looking at over this coming period. I just think the themes in terms of mitigating delivery risks, as I said at the beginning, they kind of fall into 2 main categories really, around kind of market forces and external influences, and kind of that internal capacity, as I said, around resourcing, which is flagged throughout the report actually. There's a lot of mitigation strategies in place that we're looking at, and we've been talking about these throughout this year really, but multi-year business and budget planning again is getting us into that space where we're looking much more around kind of prioritising and programming work over kind of the period. Workforce planning, which is a significant piece of work that we're kind of taking forward, which will allow us to kind of get into the space of not having those resource kind of issues on particular programmes, really being clear about how we're mitigating against some of that activity. Kind of smarter working and kind of workforce agility, so kind of ending cliff edge employment, so how we're moving our kind of resources around the organisation to kind of be able to kind of hit the priorities that we're doing is a really focus for attention. And then a kind of internal governance and assurance accountability. You know, we are taking this incredibly seriously, as I said at the beginning, and there's something around how are we empowering and kind of making our colleagues accountable for some of this activity over this period. So there's a lot of work taking place to try and get us into a kind of a better place. I think notwithstanding that, there's been some really great performance over this period of time. So just in terms of 2025-26 performance reporting, we're refining the system as we go along. I think that diagram's quite small and I can circulate the slide pack for colleagues, but we are kind of really looking at the process that we've got in place to kind of manage performance and get greater oversight of all outcomes across all of the areas, including those from kind of our corporate services, enabling services. And what that refresh is going to allow us to do is kind of streamline the process, get greater accountability across work areas, but kind of get more enhanced cross-team project reporting and oversight. And I think that's indicative of some of the work that we're doing, which crosses a number of teams. It's not simply that one team is responsible for delivering a programme. We've actually got a lot of cross-collaboration. It's making sure that we've got a system that can really enable reporting on that kind of activity across the organisation, and kind of an ease of review by projects and programmes. So we'll be able to cut the data in lots of different ways because we are investing in kind of the online system that we've got in place. And what that means for the committee, I guess, is that shifting approach means that reporting will be much more analytical coming forward, with a greater focus on kind of business partnering model at an officer level. So we're hoping to continually improve, and that's in line with the performance management framework that we've got in place, where we're looking to kind of enhance the work that we do over the period. So I'll stop there, Mary, just in terms of letting people...
No, thank you, Sarah. That was quite a good overview. I think the challenge is, isn't it, as we've always said, that what we want to do is be challenging to ourselves when we're marking our own homework. And I'm really looking forward to that more analytical approach, especially as we're heading into the single settlement and focusing on our growth plan and our corridors of opportunity and how we can align the organisation behind those expected outcomes. I'll take it out of this meeting, but there's a couple of things like for the international investment, the project successes, there isn't the target. You say in the paperwork that we didn't achieve it, but it would be good to know how far away we were, particularly as we've got these new trade deals, and what the mitigations going forward with the new trade deals and so on. How's that going to influence our decision making about where our trade missions are, what do we expect globally, global investment, etc. I know that there's been a restructuring of the focus of the team around the growth plan, so I'm sure that's probably had a bit of an impact on that. And also very disappointing about the EV. So frustrating. We've got about 4,000. We need 40,000 in West Yorkshire, so we've got to get a move on with that. But let's open this up to a bit of a conversation. I'm sure people have got some thoughts. Jocelyn, any thoughts?
Well, the one thing that did occur to me, and it's not clear from the paperwork, but is the EV issue anything to do with connecting to the grid?
Thank you, Sarah. Do we know if that's grid connection or whether that's partners? Simon?
Thank you. So the principal issue and the principal body of work actually in establishing EV charging points is actually around traffic regulation orders. So every individual installation requires a process to be gone through in terms of traffic regulation orders. That no, generally the level of capacity that we're looking to provide through localised EV charging is not an impact on the grid. Clearly different when we get into bus depots, for example. No, it's all about capacity to manage through TROs in particular.
Could I ask Simon, is it possible to have like schemes that then go through the process rather than one individual installation? Could we approach government with that as a solution to some of their problems?
So I think it's a very good idea that we put a proposal to government. I mean, no, currently under the regulations that guide the preparation of TROs, they are required to be very specific and very localised, but it is a blocker within the pipeline, definitely.
Thank you. I mean, overall, it is a good news story, Sarah, and certainly saying to colleagues, deliver, deliver, deliver. We've seen, haven't we, in several departments, how they've really, particularly in Q4, escalated that delivery. So that puts us in a mature position, ready for the single settlement. So thank you very much for that. Much appreciated. Are there any further comments? Yes, Councillor Crook.
Thank you, Chair. I mean, I think it's a really good report. It's really positive, particularly like the National Health Innovation Campus as a major success. What I wanted to talk about, the carbon impact reduction bit, it seems to be there's been a lack of resource in terms of bringing that, developing that policy area, and I think it's really important that we keep track of that, particularly given all of our authorities' commitment and the mayoral authorities' commitment to 2038. If we fall behind, then, you know, particularly this year, it's really important we're on top of that sort of policy area and how that presents us collectively in the public perception.
Thank you, Sarah.
So just on that one is a particular issue where we lost kind of capability in that particular space, and it meant that we'd not got the right skills in place. We have done a piece of work which is looking at around how we get ready for the future around that particular area, and some of this is around how we measure and monitor the impact so that we can demonstrate that reasonably well across the entirety of our kind of operations, really. So I think what we've done is identify a number of areas where we need to bring that skills in, and that's been part of the business planning process to actually do that. So we feel more comfortable than we did last time round because we actually think we've got an understanding of what the gaps are that we need to kind of take that work forward. So we're hoping that we'll get better delivery on that over this next period.
Thank you, Jane.
I like Councillor Crook. I think it's an excellent report, and it's really important that we don't just, in some ways, rush through it, that we just pause and think, wow, you know, that is actually a lot of work this week. I just wanted to say a little bit about Mission 4 in terms of sustainable West Yorkshire, because Councillor Crook's quite right. There is a lot more that we can do in this space, and we do need that capacity and that work with the private sector in particular in terms of how we finance things going forward. But I just wanted to mention, in terms of UK Reef, which happened in Leeds just recently, there was a lot of interest in sustainable West Yorkshire. And for me, the highlight, the pinnacle of my visit to UK Reef was doing a video interview on West Yorkshire retrofit experience, achievements and plans. And I think, given the nature and the scale of the challenge ahead, some of the things that we've done this last year have really put us in good position in terms of really pace and scale of some of those things for the future. But you're absolutely right that we need to work a bit in a more clever manner, really, to think about some of the ways in which we evaluate some of the carbon impact of the work. And one of the things we've been talking about in the Climate and Environment Committee has been very much about, given that a lot of the work is of the combined authority is about transport, how we bring some of that thinking around transport, around some of the work of the Climate Committee. So that's very helpful. Thank you. But generally, a really great report. And the Mayor was modest about the biggie, really, because this is what's just happened and what's happening now. I actually think it's really hard to evaluate is the decision about bus franchising. That was the biggie, actually. It doesn't necessarily appear quite in the same evaluation tick box, but we have made progress, we really have.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. And moving forward to the year ahead, now we have the decision on tram as well, being able to have that integrated plan, which should hopefully be reflected. Asma, then Ben.
Just an observation, really. You've already, Sarah, highlighted the foreign investment in West Yorkshire's economy as something that is being looked at. Obviously, there's a decline from Q3 and Q4. However, we seem to have strengthened the international collaboration and trade initiatives, which remain consistent amongst Q3 and Q4. I think we just probably need to home in to see it's more focus-based trade missions and international collaboration where we are determining our outcomes leading to foreign investment within our economy, and the regions that we're visiting and these trade missions, I feel, probably need a more focused approach in the areas that we're going, so that we can measure to see where we're falling down in so far as, and I think I have that view with a number of trade missions. They look great, but it's got to be focus-based and measurable in terms of what we're getting as outcomes. So culturally and various other reasons, what has been the gaps that mean that when it's not translating into... That's just an observation.
I think that's a really good point, and something that I've reiterated to the teams, that don't suggest we go anywhere without expected outcomes. But it was pleasing today with the Secretary of State for Health to be able to say that because of the trade mission to Nashville, Leeds University now has its only relationship with a US university at Vanderbilt in Nashville that has come out of that trade mission, and also the relationships with the businesses of Nashville and also our businesses here in Leeds in health tech and life sciences. We've quantifiable outcomes, but you're absolutely right. We have to account for every single penny for the public, and where we go has got to chime with our growth plan, our ambitions for our region, our diaspora, where those opportunities are as well to build business links, and also to now, because we have these trade links and trade deals negotiated by government, to jump on the back of those, whereas previously it was relationship often mayor to mayor that had that trust and confidence. But you're absolutely right to hold us to account there, and we can maybe make sure that there's a greater focus on our expected outcomes and were those expected outcomes delivered. Obviously, some of these relationships will be long-term, so it won't be immediate, but certainly something that we should look at. Ben.
Thank you, Mayor. I guess I wanted to welcome the positive comments about the performance of the organisation over the year, which is good. And I'm really pleased that the report is as positive as it is. However, there is obviously no room for complacency, and I just wanted to echo Sarah's points that we are moving to a more analytical basis for this, and we will need to, I think, take papers to FRCC meetings that talk about how we're going to approach that, because we clearly can't measure everything.
Yeah.
There are some things that we will measure because they are the fundamental outputs or outcomes that really matter. There are some things where the indicator is more of a proxy for a wider range of activity, and international is a good example of that. And there's some areas where, frankly, I think our teams need to think about what is the job that they're trying to do, and EV is a good example of that. The metrics here are about delivering the Levi programme, not about actually reaching the target that you set out there. And so how do you strike the right balance between actually what we want to see as West Yorkshire, which probably involves allowing the private sector to deliver these when it doesn't need help from the public sector, but influencing where we should, versus delivering a government programme, which is a different subset of that, but might not be the whole answer. So we're going to move to that space because ultimately we'd like this report to give kind of our internal view as to whether our level of confidence that we're delivering good value for money for the taxpayer in the delivery of these outcomes, not just the achievement of the outcomes themselves. Thanks.
And certainly having inclusive growth at the heart of what we're doing, it is very frustrating that we have very few, if any, on-street EV parking that is in the back-to-back communities and so on. It's often private driveways or new builds. So we've got to make sure that we democratise this as well. So this is open to everybody in whichever community. And I know inclusive growth is something, Asma, that you're very interested in. Okie doke, any further comments? Righto. Can the committee note performance against business plan outputs for 24-25 and the planned activity to address challenging performance? Thank you. And the committee notes arrangements for performance reporting for 25-26. Thank you so much. HR Management Information, item 6. This report provides detail and analysis on our people measures, including information concerning employee sickness, voluntary turnover, the EDI profile of the organisation, and information relating to the fulfilment of vacancies. And this report concerns quarter 4, 24-25, reflecting information between January and March 25. And our Assistant Director of People and Transformation, Joe Dent, will take us through the paper. But before you do, Joe, can I just say, I was so pleased to see our sickness levels falling. That is such a great direction of travel for us as an organisation, and hopefully is a suggestion of a culture where people really are content in their job and see their role as really important in the whole organisation. Thank you, Joe.
Thank you, Mayor. Absolutely. I'm pleased to report that it's a fairly positive report in terms of the overall metrics across how we're delivering right now in terms of our turnover, our sickness rates, against benchmarks and against the same quarter last year too. So we're improving on our own metrics, but we're also improving on benchmarks. Wellbeing is still the biggest area in terms of that sickness area. So we are focusing in on that too, because that pressure and delivering and those kind of things will drive pressure in those areas. So that is something we continue to focus on. I think the other thing that I'm really pleased to report on here is our EDI measures are also heading in the right direction. We cannot take our foot off the gas with that, because in terms of actually how we progress at that pace going forward is going to be really challenging. However, the key concern around disability has moved in the last quarter, and that is something we've been particularly focusing on. So I'm very, very pleased about that. So all in all, a positive report. And I think the main message from me really is I think this is a good representation of how we're delivering right now, and in line with what Sarah's just presented and what Ben alluded to a moment ago. What we've been working on our key focus is in terms of that look ahead now, and the planning, the workforce planning and the resourcing strategy, which is something we'd like to share with you at the next meeting, because that's going to be a case of how do we continue these really positive measures at pace whilst we actually change the more agility across the organisation, bringing in the skills that we need across the organisation and all the change that we're going to be doing alongside of it. So I think the other thing to report, which is again another positive thing, is we had our first senior leadership team meeting yesterday where we had everybody around the table. We filled all our senior vacancies. So that is a really positive measure, because in terms of our workforce planning, those people can now take some ownership of it, and we can support them in terms of what does that look like. They can create what they need to deliver. So it's all quite positive from me, but I'm not really sure what else to say, but I'd welcome any questions or comments.
Thank you so much. And we do know that early on in the journey towards mass transit and bus franchising, there were real challenges because of lack of capacity and recruiting at that very high level, those senior jobs. There's a real market for those roles, paid a lot of money, and if you want to come and work in the public sector, you have to take a financial hit to some degree. So it is hard to recruit, but we're hopefully an exciting organisation to come and work with great plans and attract top talent. So it's great to see that all those senior leadership roles are now filled. We can get on with that delivery. Any comments from colleagues? Yes, Jocelyn.
On the EDI reporting, we've talked before about getting people to declare and having what actions were being taken about getting more people to declare various categories. How much progress has been made on that?
Quite a lot of progress with regard to disability, but we're not going in the right direction in terms of all measures. I think that's been more challenging more recently too. So we're trying to be sensitive about it because this is going to be a bit more of a longer game around building trust with people. But we have noticed a decline in new entrants into the organisation, not wanting to let us know that information. So we are working on a very personal, targeted level with people, as well as trying to assure confidence more widely. We have network groups which we involve in that. We work with partners outside of the industry to help us and support us as well. Obviously, any other feedback or comments are very welcome, but it's challenging, to be perfectly honest. And like I say, recent changes or recent rulings have not particularly helped that. So we're working with it. It's not changed anything for us within our organisation, and that's the message. So that's where we're at.
Could I ask Jo, can we do a bit of a ring round other mayoral combined authorities, because this may be something that is shared, that young people coming into work now don't want to tell their boss what their sexuality is or whatever. So I wonder whether this is something that is just about our organisation, or whether this is more wide-ranging, because there will be other MCAs with that detail and that feedback. So it would be helpful if it was just us, and that's something we would have to absolutely address, but it might be just something that's societal. Yes, Councillor Crook.
Thank you, Chair. Again, on the EDI targets, and I think it's positive that we're doing better and doing better than most as well in this space, but particularly on minority sexual orientation, we're well ahead of our target, but our target is well below the portion of the population that would be represented as minority sexual orientation. So why are we setting the target well below where we're already achieving? It just makes us look like we're smashing the target when really we're below where we should be still.
Very, very valid point, and we're going to review all of the targets, and as part of the start of the new quarter, we've asked ourselves that very same question.
Thank you, Councillor Crook.
Just a related point, we collectively as the authorities in the West Yorkshire Combined Authority have all recognised care experience as a protected characteristic. Could we start collecting data on that demographic to ensure that we're including people who are care experienced in our employment? Or, in fact, in general, in our policies across the board, if we're going to recognise it as a protected characteristic, we should be at least storing data so that we know where we're at with that group.
Councillor, do you mean those from the care system or carers?
Thank you, Chair. I've got two comments. I think partially the answer to Councillor Cook's question is that we set a profile, and it could be that actually we're just ahead in terms of profile, in terms of how long it would take us to reach the proportion of the population that we needed to get to. But Joe's right. We're looking at all of that. I wanted to make just to underline the point that the workforce and getting the right skills for the future and doing so in a way that still allows us to hit all of those important diversity targets is a real challenge. And so when Jo says that she's bringing the workforce strategy to the next FRCC, that's absolutely something that we as a leadership team are very focused on. And the mechanisms that we use to bring those people into the organisation is going to be really critical, alongside mechanisms to more flexibly deploy people within the organisation. And we're also looking in parallel at how we do that to make sure that we're able to flexibly and more agilely use the people that we have. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further comments? No, thank you so much for that, Joe. Can the committee note the information provided relating to the CA's workforce, that we note the recommendations? We do. Thank you so much. Moving on to item 7, Public Sector Equality Duty Report 24-25. This provides a summary of the annual Public Sector Equality Duty published by the CA. The full report for 24-25 was published March 25, and the Appendix 1 contains the full detail of the work that's been done across teams and working in partnership over the last financial year. The content demonstrates compliance with our obligations under the Equality Act and outlines the impact that the CA initiatives have had for diverse communities across West Yorkshire. Can I ask Sarah Eaton take us through the paper?
Thank you, Mayor. So obviously this is a critical report for us in terms of demonstrating our compliance with the public sector equality duty, but also around our own equality objectives, really. So that's incredibly important in terms of the work that we're doing across the combined authority. And Joe's alluded to some of the work that we're doing perhaps internally, but also kind of in us making sure that the work we're doing with communities is representative of the communities that we kind of serve. So it's an incredibly important piece of work, really. And I think, you know, if people have not had a chance to actually have a look in the attachment, I think there's a great range of evidence there around some of that activity that is taking place now, which I think is really pleasing to kind of see. So what we've just wanted to talk a little bit about how we're starting to kind of embed reporting around EDI within some of the work that we're doing and how we're actually collecting data. So we've moved away from kind of trying to do an annual report that's picking up activity at the end of the year. What we started to do is implement some kind of quarterly kind of feedback through our internal liaison with colleagues across the combined authority, which is kind of maximising that ability to capture data about things that are happening. But I think the focus, what we're trying to do is shift away from kind of an internal focus much more to the kind of that external focus. So what you start to see in the document is that examples of case studies of work that's taking place across the region, really, and some of the difference that some of this work is making to people's lives, which I think is really, really important. So it's not just about kind of a compliance issue. This is about demonstrating the impact that we're having in communities that kind of need the support. So there's a couple of examples in the report, but not to necessarily go through those today. I think it's really important that we keep our foot on the pedal on this work and that we continue to make sure that we're kind of progressing some of this activity, particularly over the coming period. I think Joe's alluded to some of the kind of the activity that's taking place in terms of kind of rulings, but also more broadly the wider context in which we're operating. And it's more important than ever that we kind of maintain momentum on some of this activity. I think we need to make sure that all of our outward facing activities is looking at kind of this kind of approach, really. So I think this again is another area of work that we're trying to progress, and we're also building kind of a dashboard around reporting on EDI activity, which will be something that will play into performance reporting as we kind of progress and kind of move forward. I think as you'll see towards the end of the report, what we're focusing over the coming year is kind of finalising the delivery of our current EDI plan, but we're also starting work on our next EDI strategy, because that EDI plan is starting to kind of come to an end. And that will look at how kind of we continue to demonstrate impact, really. But in addition to that, we'll continue to work kind of in partnership, really, so with our local authorities, but also with other colleagues around, you know, within the RCB. And obviously the work of the Inclusivity Champion is fundamental in this space in terms of being able to get out and speak to communities around the work that we're doing and make sure that their voices are heard. So there's other work taking place around how we're improving that engagement with communities, kind of working with colleagues in local authorities. So I'll stop there, but a really important piece of work, I think, for the organisation.
Thank you. And can I just reference the work that Adiba does in this space and the way that she's been able to reach out to communities? She's been so fantastic and really helpful. Any comments? Asma?
just to highlight that you have said the promotion of the Women of West Yorkshire Network, and I see a lot of outward work that your inclusivity champion is doing. I think that's brilliant, and it's not just one sector based. I've seen that there is the sports cultural side roles as well, and I think if we get into every sector and have a presence from an EDI perspective, I think we just need to be seen as well in these areas where the communities are looking to see that EDI development. So for me, you're out there and in the right places, so well done.
Thank you. And certainly around business, really important to us, isn't it, to diversify the people that know about us and our offer and so on. Any further comments? No, thank you. Okay, are we happy that the committee notes the content of the annual EDI Public Sector Quality Duty Report? We do. Thank you so much. Moving on to the Corporate Risk Register. This report provides a snapshot of the current Corporate Risk Register, delivering assurance on key risks that impact the missions and objectives of the Combined Authority. Appendix 1 provides a public version of the Risk Register, and a full unredacted private version is attached at Appendix 2. If members wish to discuss the content of the exempt appendix, please indicate and we'll move into closed session for that part of the item. And maybe you can keep me on task, Ben, if we veer into dangerous waters. The report also updates members on the activity underway in accordance with the Risk Management Strategy Development Plan. Could I ask Satinder Sahota to take us through the paper? Satinder, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Members, you're requested to consider and note the Combined Authority's current risk register, a hard copy of which is provided for you in A3. In addition, members, you're also requested to note the activity set out within the Risk Management Strategy Development Plan. That plan is accessible at paragraph 11.1 of your report by way of a link. You'll see from that plan, members, that it comprises 4 phases. Each of those phases contains key activities, interim measures and deliverables within those phases. For your awareness, we are currently in phase 2. Ordinarily, members, the Combined Authority's risk management arrangement sits with the Governance and Audit Committee. However, it's considered important that to share the risk register with this committee today in tandem with the Risk Management Strategy Development Plan. Due to the cross-cutting nature of risk management, members should also be aware that on the 28th of April, the Governance and Audit Committee received an update in relation to the development plan, and that update resulted in a helpful and constructive discussion on those themes and areas set out in paragraph 3.3 of the report before you. Finally, members, as touched on in the report, the risk register is presentationally very much work in progress. For your awareness, a revised presentation approach will be put before the Governance and Audit Committee at its next meeting in late July. Thank you, Mayor, and happy to take any queries.
Thank you so much. Is there any way at all this can be bigger? It's so challenging, even with my glasses. It's just an extra effort to try and decipher, because it may just be me, but it is incredibly small. If there is just a larger sheet and just to blow it up a little bit would be really helpful, if that's our printer can cope.
Absolutely, there will be a revised approach, and the idea is to have each risk on a page.
Fantastic, fantastic. So we don't necessarily have to do comparisons on the big sheet, we can just do one risk at a time. Thank you.
Absolutely.
That's
I share
wonderful.
Your frustrations.
But that's really helpful. So for those with super eyesight,
these might work.
Anybody would like to comment on the risk register? Yes, Councillor Crook.
Thank you, Chair. Can I ask about CRR 006, operator bus service? That's moved from medium to very high. I just wondered why and whether the Combined Authority has specific concerns about that.
Thank you, Simon.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. So we've increased the risk rating largely because we've reviewed the way in which we've gone about rating its potential very closely at present, and we are alive to the fact that as we move into a period of transition from a deregulated bus network to a franchised bus network, that there could, at points through that change period, be incentives or motivations for actors in the bus market to change their attitude to the ongoing operation of services through that period. There are contingencies that we've made to manage that, and we are specifically we have specifically established a network continuity programme as part of the change programme for bus franchising, but recognising just how fundamental the ongoing provision of bus services is to the vitality of West Yorkshire, we felt that it was important to raise the rating and therefore ensure that it retains a very high priority across both members and also our internal leadership team.
I've also said to senior leaders, don't take anything for granted. We can't be complacent in this space because we're working with the private sector who have different agendas, and for some, managed from companies that aren't in the UK, it is quite a potentially risky moment for us. But I'm reassured in our meetings that we're absolutely on the right track, and it's really important to be honest about the risk and understand the risk whilst also mitigating as much as we can those potential risks. But thank you for raising that, because obviously it's a really big issue for us. It's pivotal to what we've promised the public, so it's important that we're not complacent. Any further comments? Yes, Councillor.
Sorry, there's one other that I would just want to quickly raise, and I have already raised it, but CRR 012, which is around our environmental risk and so on, and around that policy development, climate and environment plan, how important, just because as with buses, it's really critical to how we're seen by the public to be effectively delivering on our targets in the future. And also possibly just take this opportunity to say how pleased I am that Kirklees has again been awarded an A CDP score, the highest rating.
Thank you so much, Councillor. I blame the councillors for that. I think that you've led from the front. Congratulations. Would you like to take that one, Sarah?
I've just seen if I can read it as well. And
Can I double check the climate environment?
Yeah.
412. That's not very high. That's consistent with where we've been. Is that the one you were talking about?
012, I think. Sorry, CRR
012. Climate and environment.
yes, I think it's
stayed high. Sorry, I apologise.
Yes, no, it's just
It's the
stayed
eyesight issue,
consistently.
let's say.
Exactly. I think we're are you content, Councillor?
Yes.
Ben?
Well, just to address that point, that this is exactly the same issue that you raised in the paper,
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
which Sarah answered around, partially around resourcing, and partially around how we then process the implications of carbon in our decision making.
Super. Okie doke, thank you so much. So we didn't stray out of our guide rails, so that's great. So can the committee note the corporate risk register and ongoing risk management activities under the Governance and Audit Committee's oversight? Yes, thank you so much. Okay, moving on to the Gateway Review, item 9 on the agenda. This report notes the findings and outcomes of the Gateway Review, including confirmation of the release of associated funds. Can I firstly congratulate you and the team for this incredible piece of work that was so detailed and so exacting, and you've done us a really great job on this, because government have now acknowledged that we have passed the Gateway Review, and there's some very good and outstanding elements of the work that we've done. So it wasn't an easy piece of work. Congratulations to all of you and the team. So could I ask Sarah to take us through the papers? Sarah.
Thank you, Mayor, and I've invited Anna to come down and sit with us, really, because obviously we've attached, we've given links to the big report, and if there's any kind of technical questions around the evaluation, which is incredibly complex, I'm sure Anna will be able to kind of dip in and kind of answer any comments that people have got. So I think in terms of the process, we fetched a report, I think, about a year ago now around the Gateway Review. This work started in early 2023, and it was in 2 stages, a kind of a mid-term review and a final review. And this is a piece of work that was kind of government mandated around and a requirement of the Growth Fund, so the West Yorkshire Bus Transport Fund, and obviously gain share funding. It's chiefly focused on evidencing kind of economic outcomes of delivery under both of those funds. The work kind of happens across 3 main strands really, kind of progress plus and impact. So what the evaluation is looking at a number of things in terms of kind of that kind of economic outcomes, but it's also supported, I think, by other kind of evidence around kind of economic forecasting, capacity and partnerships, and they're important parts of the process. So if colleagues look at the executive summary, a significant amount of what's been looked at is not just around what's been delivered, but kind of the approaches that we've got in place to ensure delivery. And I think from my perspective, getting involved in this piece of work, the actual evaluation process that are adopted throughout this process are particularly stringent, and it's kind of almost like the purest form of evaluation that you could possibly have. So to actually demonstrate some of the economic outcomes is incredibly challenging, and as you'll see in the report, some of that is down to kind of the approach that's been used, which is around having counterfactuals in place, and that is it's almost like demonstrating that something would happen on a scheme that you've not done the intervention in, and kind of finding schemes that do that is incredibly challenging. So I think just to say that in terms of the work, there's been a huge amount of work undertaken by the team throughout this process. As we got to the end of the process, the government said to us that they were kind of abandoning gateway reviews for kind of combined authorities, and we kind of just sat back and went, oh no, because there have been 15 evidence papers produced to an organisation appointed by the government, SQW. And what you've got there is a synthesis of those papers, so that's not the entirety of the work. There's a huge amount, not just from us, but from our partners who have also kind of had to talk about and evidence the impact that their schemes has had. So this has been a huge amount of work, and just thanks to partners really for kind of bearing with us, because this has been additional work on those. But kind of what you see in the paper is that in relation to the schemes evaluated under the Transport Fund, there is evidence of economic impact, which is found to be generally modest or inconclusive. And again, that is because of some of the methodology. So, for example, one of the examples that Anna gave me was, we could put in a particular roundabout or a road, and we might have housing development that's been attached to the side of that, but because we've not got evidence that the developer would have done something different if that roundabout hadn't been there, and this is really difficult because some of these schemes run over a period of time. We don't have contact with the developers because we haven't got the evidence. We can't count some of the outcomes, and so that you can see the challenge in terms of some of these pieces of work in terms of being able to demonstrate what we've done and the impact that has been made. So there are outcomes there. It's just that in terms of the kind of how the evaluation works, they're not necessarily recognised in this way. And that does reflect the limitations of the methodology, which both SQW and MHLG have kind of recognised. So this isn't something that is just applicable to us. This is applicable across this kind of measurement piece for us and other combined authorities, and I think more generally. You'll see there that in terms of our gain share programme, we're subject to impact evaluation, and that resulted in a net benefit. So there's some really positives in the report that you'll find. I think some of those positives, which are really great, is that the CA is progressing well. And I think that kind of maturity of our evaluation approach is really important, not least because as we move into an integrated settlement, we are going to have to demonstrate kind of the impact they're having, and Anna is doing work around an outcomes framework that will allow us to kind of mature that approach even further. What we have been commended on is our proactive engagement with the Gateway Review. We were only one of 2 combined authorities that completed in line with agreed timeframes, and the only CA that undertook kind of work in parallel on 2 funds at the same time. So that kind of just demonstrates, I think, some of the kind of activity that the team has done. I think also, I think what's reflected in the report is kind of the Mayor's focus on skills and culture and equality and diversity and inclusion is regarded as having had a real positive impact in the region. And again, I think that is really, really important in terms of kind of the wider impact of some of the work that we're doing. Kind of the maturity of our evaluation processes and capacity seen as positive. And I think stakeholders were consistently positive about the way the CA uses evidence to inform strategy and the kind of the quality of that evidence. And they also noted that kind of the improvements that's been made within the CA around decision making, particularly around decision making around economic development. So I think generally speaking over the time period things have improved significantly, and that was kind of recommended in the report. So overall, the findings are in expectation, in line with expectation. And I was disappointed with some of the feedback. It's great feedback, I think, in context. But work is kind of ongoing now to kind of look at the kind of where perhaps we can improve, and we can build that into this next phase of the evaluation work that we're going to be doing alongside the development of the outcomes framework. So just in terms of the outcome, because this was kind of the last time that we'll be doing this, we kind of had a bit of a change of approach towards the end of last year, and we had to take part in an annual conversation, and that will be the future approach that will be taken around some of this activity moving forward. So we had both the Gateway Review and an annual conversation. And that meeting took place in March, and that provided an opportunity to kind of clarify some of the areas and discuss the approach moving forward. Since that time, we've actually had a letter, which you'll see in the paper, confirming that we've successfully kind of passed through the Gateway Review, and that has also triggered the payment, the annual payment for this piece of work. So I think a very challenging process. I think we've learned quite a lot through that process, and we'll feed back some of that into the kind of the approach moving forward. But I think the positives are that we've managed to get through that Gateway Review and we've been paid. I think for this next year's worth of funding. So I'll stop speaking there now, and if anybody has got any detailed questions, Anna's obviously here to kind of support. Yeah,
And thank you, Anna, for all that you've done. But also, like you say, it was a huge piece of work which was incredibly detailed. But actually, we have learned a lot as an organisation. And the fact that we don't ever have to do it again, it will be in a different way, is also helpful. But to know what we are focused on is all of the work that we're doing. We do need to have those quantifiable outcomes and the difference that we're making for the public and making their lives easier, better, greater opportunities and access to great transport, etc., etc. So I think whilst a tough piece of work, really valuable. So thank you. I don't quite know what you'll do now it's done, because I'm sure it was compelling, and that was all you were doing for many months. So oh, that's good to hear. Thank you so much, Anna. Any questions from colleagues on the Gateway Review? No? Thank you. Okie doke. Well, the committee notes the findings and the outcome of the Gateway Review. So well done, and no questions for you. So it was obviously great detail. Thank you. No, thank you. Okay, moving on to Treasury Management Performance 24-25. This report provides the committee with a summary of the CA's Treasury Management activity and performance for the financial year 24-25. It demonstrates compliance with the CIPFA Treasury Management Code and Prudential Code, and outlines how the authority has managed its investments, borrowing and cash flows during the year. Can I ask Kate Taylor to take us through this paper? And it's so great that we've got that fresh pair of eyes looking at our organisation as we change and develop and mature. So thank you, Kate, over to you.
Thank you, Mayor. This is the first two papers on the agenda today that will be backwards looking and looking at past performance in there. So this is our Treasury Management report, looking at how we've performed over the full year of 24-25 against the Treasury Management strategy that was approved in February 2024. Drawing attention to table 3.2, that shows a strong performance around investment income, so generating 40.5 million over the year. And just to note, there has been no new external borrowing as well within the financial year. In summary of paragraph 3.19, that gives the key highlights. I'm pleased to report the authority is acting within its limits, maintains strong liquidity, and it's been able to optimise returns on its cash without compromising risk. There is a section in there that gives an economic outlook for 25-26. We will continue, obviously, to report to you throughout the year on that. That will change. And we will continue to give further reporting. But this is very much a kind of report that is telling you what we've done and we've done that safely.
And what's your thinking about how it's going to change?
So I think we have, so there's not an exact science on treasury management, I think it'd be fair to say. So in terms of investment income in there, we need to get stronger around the forecasting, I think that'd be fair to say. So understanding what cash we are going to have in the bank and having a really firm strategy around how we're going to best utilise that ultimately to get returns in there. Looking at borrowing, I'd say there has been no new borrowing this year. Looking at the programme going forward, obviously we have things coming online like mass transit, bus franchising. That may move over the year. So I think from what is a, I guess, quite BAU report at the moment, treasury management will become more important from an authority perspective, and you'll probably see a little bit more activity going on during the year going forward.
Super, thank you. Any comments or thoughts? Yes, Councillor Hinchcliffe.
Thank you for that, and welcome.
Thank you.
Obviously, when we looked at this in previous years, obviously we've lived through some very financially turbulent times in recent years with obviously high interest rates, which impacted on our treasury management. Now, we did get in revenue over and above what we predicted. Are we more now in line with our budget on that, or is it still becoming a surprise?
So we are over budget. As the report states, we set a budget of £5 million for 24-25. We've achieved 40.5, so that is significantly over.
Okay.
There are two bits that sit in there. One is understanding how much cash that we're going to have. We are in a competitive bidding round at the moment, so actually at the point of setting the budget, we don't always know when cash is going to come in from government, which can raise our cash balances. Integrated settlement will give us an opportunity to be able to better plan that. And we have big items like the capital programme, so linking through into the next report around actually what you'll see of delivery of the capital programme. If we're not spending that money out, then it is sitting in the bank, and that can give us a higher return in there. So there are two kind of bits in there, and also the markets as well in there. So and to be honest, that type of return and that over budget is similar in other authorities have been seeing in there in terms of there at the moment. So I wouldn't say we're particularly out of line in terms of that. I think, for us it will be controlling what we can control, which is around the forecasting element, and then working with the treasury management advisors around the markets piece.
Thank you. And of course, in the spending review, we're going to know more, aren't we, about our financial input. But also the single settlement is not more money, is it, Kate? It's just greater freedoms and flexibilities. So it's not going to definitely give us a new pipeline of funding, but just hopefully give us that opportunity to use that money better and more efficiently.
Absolutely, yes. So, yes, integrated assessment isn't kind of the golden bullet, I guess, to say. It will give us money in one pot into functional pillars. It will give us great flexibility to move that money around, and actually a focus on delivering outcomes and better local decision making around actually how we're going to achieve that, rather than, I guess, be mandated to deliver in a certain way in there. But it will not, deliver more money per se. Obviously, if government spending goes down.
Thank you so much. Any further comments? No? Lovely, thank you so much. Is the committee happy to note the Treasury Management position for 24-25? Super. So financial outturn 24-25, item 11. This report presents the draft final outturn position on both the 24-25 financial year. It provides a comparison with the approved budget and Q3 forecast, outlines key variances and the reasons for them, and sets out the proposed treatment of underspends, overspends and carry forwards. Kate, can I come back to you to take us through the paper?
So, as the Mayor said, this report closes off the financial year for 24-25, although just asking members to note that these numbers will form the basis of the statement of accounts that will be subject to audit, so could be subject to change in there. On the revenue position, after proposed transfers to reserves, the authority is reporting a break-even position. Within that, there are two significant variances from approved budgets. So we have just talked around the additional treasury management income, so windfall income that has come in as a result of the activities there. There's also additional enterprise zone income that was unbudgeted, and then underspends within staffing expenditure as well. There is also an adverse variance that is a £23.6 million pressure that has arisen through a review of in-year capitalisation of staffing costs in there. That gives us a revenue surplus of 27.1 million when those are netted off, and that report proposes to transfer those into an earmark reserve that will provide the authority future financial resilience against both committed activities and any future fiscal shocks that may arise and may impact the MTFP as set out within the report. Just to note, the capital programme has delivered 320.1 million against its initial budget of 474.6 million. Although, just to note, that is only £12.4 million less than the last forecast, which shows a positive trend in the maturity of forecasting that we will look to continue over this financial year. Major scheme variances are detailed in the paper, and happy to take any detailed questions.
Thank you, that's grand. Any questions? Yes, Ben.
It's not so much a question as a comment, really, and an observation. I wanted to thank Damon and since he's been arrived a few weeks ago, Kate, because Damon has kind of really gone through our financial situation and colloquially kind of kicked the tyres on the processes that we've run within the organisation. And I think as a consequence, you're seeing greater transparency and greater more clarity in the presentation of information, which I think is a really positive step. We talked earlier about the workforce strategy. One of the key things that we're grappling with in terms of the organisation's kind of macro level finances is that how we handle the decline in revenue income over time, coupled with a workforce strategy that is requiring greater levels of resourcing. And that is the kind of conundrum that we're balancing at the moment. And so I know this is very common to all authorities, but it is absolutely critical for some of the major delivery milestones that we're set as an organisation. So I guess have that theme in mind when we're thinking about both a resourcing workforce strategy, making sure that we can recruit the skills that we need at the competitive rates that the market's going to demand, while not setting ourselves up for a deficit position in the future that's unsustainable.
Great stuff, thank you. Jocelyn?
I'd like to reiterate what Ben said about the quality of reporting. This is so much better, and I'm so much happier to see it at more granularity, especially at directorate level and then beyond that. That's exactly what we need, I think, to enable us to make properly informed decisions. So thank you.
Thank you. So congratulations, Damon, all round for you and the team, for, as Ben says, for kicking the tyres. No disrespect to the previous incumbent, but it's a whole new world now, isn't it? With greater responsibilities and maturity and single settlement coming and greater budgets and more to deliver. So we do need that tight grip and that transparency. And it's good to see the chair of the scrutiny committee here today, as I'm sure he will also concur that extra detail is always helpful for people who need that transparency. So super. So are we happy to note the 24-25 draft revenue and capital outturn positions, impact on revenues and implications from the medium-term financial plan? We are, lovely. So moving on to item 12, financial monitoring and reporting 25-26. This outlines the proposed timetable and framework for financial monitoring and reporting for 25-26. It provides visibility of when in-year financial reports will be produced, reviewed and submitted to the Finance Resources and Corporate Committee and Combined Authority, ensuring continued oversight of the performance against the revenue and capital budgets. Kate, can I come back to you to take us through the paper? Thank you.
So now we move into the present and into our current financial year in there. So as we talked, really effective in-year financial management is absolutely vital. It helps us understand the drivers of performance, linking into the performance report that Sarah has reported earlier on there. understanding our financial risks and opportunities, and also provides assurance that we are using public funds effectively and delivering the strategic priorities. So this paper sets out a timetable of reporting for both capital and revenue that you can expect to see effectively over this year. So it is there so you understand what is coming and continues to evolve as we've talked around those improvements in reporting. In terms of doing that, we try to find a balance between timeliness, the information that you'll get, the insight, governance, including our statutory requirements, and also the capacity. Appendix 1 details the areas that we've finance team has identified as areas for continuous improvement. We're committed to delivering these and to ensure that we are fit for future, particularly as we look forward to the new world of a single settlement and new funding flexibilities within there. You'll also notice within, actually, there is a continued focus on providing more transparent information to yourselves and actually making sure it's information that is useful and to assist you, as I say, in decision making in there. So again, happy to take any comments.
Thank you. May I just say it's really important that your number one is improved clarity and accessibility, because these reports aren't just for us. They're for councillors, they're for members of the public. We should be open and transparent and not obfuscate by using jargon, if that is the right jargonistic word that I've just used. I learn a lesson myself. So thank you so much for that. Any comments on the approach?
I think it's very sensible that we've got this plotted out throughout the year so that activity can take place even at the beginning of the year, even if some of it's provisional, rather than all the concentration of effort being at the end of the year, and obviously very much more stressful and a problem for capacity as we get further on into the year. So I think this is a very sensible approach.
Thank you. Good news all round. Great stuff. Any further comments? No? Thank you so much. Can we recommend the committee notes the proposed financial reporting scope and timetable and supports the ongoing programme of continuous improvement? We can. Thank you. Moving on to budget planning 26-27. This provides an update on the proposed approach and key activities for the development of the 26-27 revenue and capital budgets and the associated business planning process across the CA. Kate, back to you.
Thank you. So now we move into forward looking and looking forward to 26-27 and the process that we are looking to put in place to ensure that the authority meets its legal duty to deliver a balanced budget by the statutory deadlines. That budget will need to demonstrate how it supports the delivery of the strategic priorities, meets any obligations placed on us by funders, and also works towards keeping the organisation on the path to financial sustainability. To achieve that, the coordination and support myself as a Section 73 officer to be assured that that budget is based on sound and robust assumptions and estimates. The budget setting process is ran as one part of a jigsaw within the business planning cycle. 26-27 will be the first year of us receiving an integrated settlement. There are key interdependencies within that negotiation process that are still be confirmed with HMG, namely around confirmation of the quantum, so how much money we'll get, and the outcomes framework, so what we will need to deliver for that money. We have, however, targeted approval of the final budget in December 25, which is earlier than previous years. That will give ourselves and partners sufficient mobilisation time to be in the best position to deliver from the 1st of April. The integrated settlement, as we said, will not deliver additional funding, but there will be greater flexibility. We are looking to bring in learner from the Trailblazers, so West Midlands, where I've come from, and Greater Manchester. We'll continue to bring updates to the committee throughout the year at key points around this process.
Thank you so much, and it's an exciting piece of work, and it's very helpful that Greater Manchester and the West Midlands have been the first adopters, so we can actually learn lessons from them as well. And also your experience, Kate, in the West Midlands is going to be invaluable as we go forward and work with government to understand this equation that then will give us the quantum of how much money we're getting and what we can do with that in parallel with our expected outcomes and our ambitions. Any comments on this? Yes, Councillor Hinchcliffe.
Just obviously this is a high level sort of timeline, isn't it, really? But I'm just thinking, obviously, just to make sure that local authorities are involved as early as possible in the budget process, because we're probably already thinking, you know, local authorities about next year's budget, and therefore it would be good to start the conversations with combined authority at the earliest point as well. So just to make sure that we've got that in schedule.
Absolutely. So I'm getting out over the next months to meet all of your directors of finance and to start that kind of engagement. And actually, Sarah herself talking yesterday about actually how we get that engagement across local authority partners. The other piece as well that we have kind of impressed upon HMG is we need to go first so that we can then give the information for you to feed into your budget setting to make sure we've got that sequencing right within the overarching timetable as well. So absolutely on our agenda.
Ben.
Thank you, Mayor. It's a follow-up to respond to Councillor Hinchcliffe's point. I think one of the emerging risks is that because we are aiming for the single settlement, integrated settlement outcome, and for that process to start, become live in April 2026, we're not going to get the number in a meaningful form that is relevant to West Yorkshire next week. In fact, we think that number is probably not going to emerge from central government until early autumn. So one of the biggest risks to us being able to input meaningfully into those processes, as you set out, Councillor Hinchcliffe, is actually when we get that number back from central government. So they're aware of that, we're aware of that. It's been an issue for the previous two trailblazers,
Yes, that's right.
and we're all working to try and get that sorted as early as we can.
Yeah, because we don't want to be held back, do we? But we can't make a decision on a budget if we don't know what it is yet. Councillor Hinchcliffe.
That is just how government operates, so that's what we have as well. So we've had that all the time. So we go through a budget process. We start the consultation before we know what the settlement's going to be, and then we can't pass it until we know what the settlement is. So we have to be agile, don't we, in a very fast-moving world, and hopefully your budget's timeline will sort of reflect
Extremely
that.
agile.
Super good points. Thank you. And we'll be keeping up the pressure to support government to be as swift as possible with that decision. So can the committee note the proposed approach and timelines and endorse the approach to budgeting and business planning? We can. Thank you all so much. 14, financial strategy and medium-term financial plan update. This provides an update on progress made in developing the CA's refreshed financial strategy and updated medium-term financial plan for the period 25-26 to 29-30. It outlines the key work streams underway, dependencies and planned next steps in advance of formal budget setting for the 26-27 financial year. And back again to you, Kate.
Thank you. So finally, this report sets out the work that's been done to date on the financial strategy and the medium-term financial plan. This is focused on financial resilience, sustainability, capital investment and looking at value for money. Just to note, this work is ongoing and we are continuing to work with budget holders around that to ensure that we identify funding gaps and pressures as well as opportunities. Alongside that, we're developing scenarios which we will incorporate with the outcomes from the spending review next week. This work is absolutely vital to help me fulfil my statutory duties, and we will continue to update the committee at a later point on the results of this work. As I say, particularly next week is particularly pivotal for us in terms of understanding what that looks like going forward in there. So this is really about noting the ongoing work and the emerging picture, and we will, of course, be back to you.
Thank you so much. And even at the last minute, I was able yesterday, and I'm also seeing the Chancellor Friday, to be able to still lobby, even at this last minute, for a good outcome for us at the spending review. Any comments? No, thank you. Is the committee happy to note the progress made on the financial strategy and medium-term financial plan and comments on the priorities being delivered? We are. Thank you all so much. And that is the end of the meeting. I'm very grateful for your attendance and also your scrutiny of the papers, and also a very good presentation, Kate. Thank you so much. And also Satinder for your contribution for the first meeting. The next meeting will be confirmed at the CA's annual meeting 19th of June, subject to the approval of the proposed calendar of meetings that is normal as we go through for 25-26. So we'll be able to get that in your diary as a matter of urgency at that meeting. Thank you all so much. Thank you, Sarah. The meeting is now coming to a close.